Figure it out.
Hello, this is Adam Koralik from Figured Out Productions. The following video is a video of some kind, and I hope you enjoy it.
Hey guys, it's Adam here, and today we're going to be talking about disk resurfacing. Disk resurfacing is the process by which you attempt to repair a CD-based game if it's having issues. Now, if you're like me and you've bought a bunch of used games over the years, I'm sure you've had problems with them at some point, whether it be cartridges or disk-based. Now, cartridges, not as big of a deal because you can clean the pins and like 95% of the time that's going to get the game working again. CDs, though, not as easy. So there are actually methods out there to repair CD-based games as long as they're not like cracked or whatever, but most of them aren't very good. Like there's things like Disc Doctor or DVD Doctor. That was like the home remedy where you could buy this little machine for like 20 bucks or whatever, and you can always tell if a disc has been disc doctored because it would like leave this weird like rainbow spiral type of thing in there. And I think I saved like 1 or 2 discs ever doing that. Then there was the toothpaste method. That was a real thing. I'm sure guys my age remember that one too. If you would take toothpaste and put it over the crack of a disc, or a scratch I should say, and then you'd let it dry and wipe it off, sometimes it would fix it temporarily. I mean, very temporarily, because you know it's just toothpaste. But sometimes that would fill the crack and allow it to work, at least briefly. However, there's obviously a far superior method, which is known as disk resurfacing. And there's various versions of disk resurfacing machines. There's things that are like upwards to like $3,000 to $5,000. And then there's lower end, but still high end ones, like a $1,500 machine. Now these are of course prohibitively expensive, I would think, for the majority of us to ever really want, because you're just using them to repair games or at least make games look better. So really weird situation came up here. I was talking to the guy who runs GG Retro Gaming. Name is Stefan. Nice guy. Now, I had actually met him at SAC GamerCon in Sacramento last December, and he was talking to me about this, and he's like, hey man, I got this new disk resurfacing machine, and I'd love for you to come check it out, and if you have any broken games, come on out. And I'm like, well dude, I live in Chicago. He's like, well, I'll fly you out if you want to do it. And I was like, okay, so the point of this video is, first of all, let's all thank GG Retro Gaming for that, because that's awesome as hell. But yeah, what I'm gonna do is I have a nice this is a nice little booklet of disc-based games here. Now, every single one of these games are extreme cases. These are all games I've collected over the years where I've attempted to rip them, which we'll go into in a second, and they failed that test and therefore need repairs. Now, you might be thinking, rip them? Why would I need to rip them? So here's the thing that I do. When I buy a used game, any CD-based game, I mean every single one with the exception of Xbox One and Wii U. Because Xbox One you can rip to its console, and Wii U I simply have not found a way to rip. But every other CD-based console, when I get the disc, I will attempt to rip it to a computer. Now, I don't do this for any sort of piracy reasons. I do this because if a computer can read every single sector of data on the disc, that means the disc is flawless. The difference is if you just put a game into a console and try to boot it, it might work, but there might still be damage on the disc you haven't gotten to just in the boot sequence. So therefore, I try to do the extreme and rip the entire thing, which means there are some, discs that I have found that are flawed. Now, I started doing this like 10, 12 years ago, and when I started doing that, I found games I'd owned for years that suffered from that problem. So over time, I had actually found people who had disk resurfacing machines, and I was able to save a bunch of them. Now, disk resurfacing machines are not magic. They're just a science, but there's only so much they can do. So I would find that on average, maybe like 50% of the discs I would put into a disk resurfacing machine would actually get saved, but that's an extreme case. In most instances, you would want to use a disk resurfacing machine if you have a disc that works, but it's very scratched and your console or whatever is having trouble reading it to an extent, or it just takes a long time to read it. Resurfacing it can clean it up and make that whole process easier and make it less stressful on the console. However, it can be, able to save completely broken games. So that's what I want to see if we can do. But again, that's an extreme situation. So like I said, we got a whole booklet here, but we're gonna take them out to Sacramento. So let's go. We're at the airport. Oh my God, it's so exciting. Look at that. There's planes, the plane bus, the plane. We're taking off. We're in the skies. It's so magical. Yay. Aviation, okay, clouds, oh, it's so exciting, so exciting. Okay, yeah, sorry everybody. So obviously, yeah, I flew out to Sacramento for this. Yes, this is a real thing. I actually did this. I mean, if you guys know anything about me, I fly a lot, so it's not that big of a deal to me, but it is fundamentally funny to think that you essentially are flying out just to get a couple of discs repaired, right? But hey, that's, that was the weirdness of the situation. So once again, I want to thank Stefan over at GG Retro Gaming for doing that, because that's very cool of him. So Yeah, so when I got there, a little bit of a misconception, misunderstanding on my part. GG Retro Gaming isn't actually a store in person, like a conventional retro game store. It's essentially, what he's going for is the retro game store online type of experience. So I was in, like you can see it here, I was in the equivalency of his store, but that's not a store you go into and actually buy things. It's more like a tiny little warehouse where he operates out of. So when I was in there, of course, that's where the disc resurfacing machine was, as well as his entire inventory. Now, Stefan was cool enough I worked out a deal with him. So if you want to check out his website, there's a link in the description to it. I got him to get you guys a 15% off coupon. So if you use that, again, that coupon will be in the description as well. You get 15% off of anything on his website, including the disc resurfacing feature, which is basically what we're talking about here. Now, disc resurfacing, I guess the way he's going to do it is a minimum of 5 discs per order, although you can do more, and you can eventually do bulk orders. You can contact him about that if you're interested. But yeah, it basically, the reason for a minimum of 5 is just the amount of money that it would cost to ship a disc would theoretically not be worth it unless you're doing a bunch at the same time. So keep that in mind. And given my general rule of like 50% of the time it's going to work and 50% of the time it's not going to, it's a pretty good rule of thumb to send like a bunch of discs all at once. But yeah, so as you can see, the disc resurfacing machine is not like some, big piece of magic, it's just a box, and this is one of those like $1,500 models. So it's very simple. You just put the disc in, as long as you've cleaned, the lid and everything, and there's obviously more components to it, but basically it just goes ahead and puts it down and then just polishes out the disc as best it can, and then theoretically buffs out any sort of surface scratches. And if you get rid of surface scratches, there's less places for light from the lens or the laser to reflect and therefore fail to read. So that's the idea. Now, in a lot of cases that will work. In a lot of cases you'll restore a disc. In a lot of cases you'll enhance a disc, so that the console has less of a difficult time reading it, even though it already operates. And in a lot of instances you'll actually be able to successfully restore a disc entirely. At least that's of course what we're going for. So, what were the results like? Well, here are the results right in front of you. Now, everything you see here in a case was successfully restored. I had the cases aside and I was able to, test them all. I ripped every single one of the discs that you see in front of you on this pile and the ones that are still inside of here, or I attempted to, I should say. And the results are very mixed. They pretty much follow exactly along the lines of my 50-50 rule. I ripped a total of 17 discs, or I should say I had a total of 17 discs cleaned. Of that, 10 were successfully restored and 7 were not. The results are a little strange, and it's, in a sense, I'm not going to say disappointing because I'm very pleased with the number of successful restorations, but I'm a little disappointed in the specific titles that were able to be restored, but that just has to do with just bad luck. But so here's the ones that actually did work out. Now, funny enough, this one I don't know what happened to the case. This is, for some reason, I have an extra disc-only copy of Championship Manager 0102 for the original Xbox. Now, this was a PAL exclusive. I think, if memory serves, I have this vague memory of buying one of the Championship Manager games over there, and the wrong disc was inside the case. But then the disc itself, I remember, because I tried this right before I went on all this, this disc could not be recognized by the Xbox at all. And not because it was a European disc, I had it on a modded Xbox, but the disc could not be recognized as even acknowledged as a game, much less be successfully ripped. So after the cleaning process, this one was probably the biggest shocker, because not only did it recognize it as an Xbox disc, it ripped it perfectly and like immediately, like no issues whatsoever, which is even more surprising because there's like cracks in the disc, like in the middle, like actual cracks, not scratches, cracks. Yet 100% this disc ripped successfully. I don't know. So that's the only part of me that goes, maybe there is magic in that little box. But either way, that one worked. So I do actually have this game already. It was more like I was just throwing in some discs just to see what the results would be. So colored me surprised that this one worked. One of the ones I was very happy to get working was this. This is an Amiga CD32 game called Arcade Pool. I picked this up in the UK. Annoyingly, it would not rip. I don't know why. I wasn't really expecting that to be the case because it didn't look bad. But after that, now it does. Everything's hunky-dory with this particular game, so happy about that. This one, very pleasant surprise in a stupid way. I picked this up in Ireland a few years ago. This is a PAL PS2 exclusive called Virtua Pro Football. Only cared about it because Sega made it. But yeah, I picked it up in Ireland for like nothing. But I've never really seen it since. I'm not at all claiming it's an uncommon game. I'm sure anybody in Europe could find this game very easily, but I had never seen it since. So I had picked it up, I wanted it to work, it wouldn't, but after this, it now totally does, so that's great. And the other thing is, I should have mentioned before, if I didn't, the thing with this resurfacing machine, or resurfacing machines in general, is there's certain formats they do and do not like. Blu-ray is really meant not to be used with this. So PlayStation 3 games, unfortunately, you can't do. PS4, Xbox One, you can't do. And Wii U, you can't do. However, one that you can do is Gamecube. And that's kind of unique because a lot of disc resurfacing machines can't do Gamecube for two reasons. One is the obvious, which is it's like a mini disc. So it means it requires extra parts. In that case, this situation, that's not an issue. It actually totally works fine. The other thing about Gamecube, and I learned this from a buddy of mine who actually used to work in a video game store and had one of these disc resurfacing machines, not this particular one, but a different one. He said that those can be tricky because the way Nintendo actually put the data onto the disc, the temperature that's created by a disc resurfacer can split the data off of the plastic and actually completely destroy the disc. So it really depends on what type of machine you actually have. Now, fortunately, in the case of this, GG Retro Gaming Stefan has the correct type of machine to allow for Gamecube, which is awesome. Unfortunately, of the 4 GameCube games I threw at it, only one was successfully restored, but hey, I'll take it. Unfortunately, it was like the dumbest one in there. Winnie the Pooh's Rumbly Tumbly Adventure. Hey, it works now. Well, you know, I can't knock that shit. It works. And another couple ones. This one was another complete surprise. I picked this up, I'm not even joking, I picked this up in a dumpster dive a few years ago. Turning Point, Fall of Liberty. This was a really terrible first-person shooter, but it was fun, like in a really dumb, it's so bad, it's fun way. This disc was absolutely just garbage, like completely destroyed. I only threw it in there just to see like what possible results would come of it. And stunningly, it actually successfully ripped. Same thing with Karaoke Revolution. I don't remember where this particular copy came from, but I remember it was the exact same situation where the disc was just completely destroyed. Yet now it totally works. Awesome. Then a couple others, very similar situation. NHL 2K2, this one totally works now for Dreamcast. And this one was probably one of the best looking ones. Check this out. Jurassic Park Operation Genesis for PlayStation 2. Take a look at this disc. This disc was completely screwed up. Like, it looked really bad. And of course, obviously, like I said, it couldn't rip, you know, it had its issues, but we put it through the resurfacer and then out came the result. I mean, like, this was so bad and versus so good that I actually wanted to show you the before and after of it because it really was quite impressive. And yeah, now the results are that the game totally works and it rips successfully. So, and it's a kind of an uncommon game, you know, I mean, more so the Xbox version, but still an uncommon game even on PlayStation 2. So to have that like fully restored is very nice. Then a couple of others in the same vein. Onimusha, totally good now. As well as Medal of Honor Rising Sun. If memory serves me, this one actually had a lot of imprints from this case on it. Like it had been in there for so long that there was like a printing on the disc, but we were able to clean that off as well, and now it totally works just fine. So there you go. So I managed to save 10 discs. Unfortunately, some of the ones I really wanted to get saved that weren't just like junk ones that I was curious about couldn't be saved, at least not yet. I'm hoping to try this again later. Godzilla Unleashed, that disc is just so screwed. The one that's the most depressing is probably this. My buddy Fox sent me a copy of, I think it was Real Bout Fatal Fury Special for the PC Engine CD. The disc looks immaculate, and it gets to 99% and always fails. And it still does that. Unfortunately, the cleaning didn't do anything to stop that. I had a couple other GameCube games, some kids' GameCube games, kind of like Winnie the Pooh. Those were annoying because each one of them got to 98 and 99% and failed. Then there's a One Piece game for the GameCube. That one only got to like 10% and then failed. This one's really stupid. Now that's what I call games for the Amiga CD32. The disc wasn't bad to begin with. Now it's immaculate. It consists of 28 megabytes of data, which is nothing. You would think it could rip right through that, and it almost does. It gets to 99% and fails. Still does even after the cleaning. I don't know why. You know, sometimes you just can't save them. I don't know. This one pisses me off though. This is a Neo Geo CD game. I want to say like Samurai Showdown or something like that. This one, I don't know what to make of it because it just won't read like at all. The computer acknowledges that there is a disc and it sees that it's a CD-ROM based disc and that it has multiple tracks to it, but when you try to rip it, it's like it doesn't even give a shit. It's just like, it just never even starts to try. And I've tried on multiple devices and nothing will initiate the ripping sequence. It just kind of tentatively just says it's working like forever. So disk resurfacing unfortunately didn't fix these, but like I said, man, the odds are like kind of 50-50. That's always been my experience with this stuff, is like half the time it works and half the time it doesn't. And this is yet another example of that pretty much playing out exactly perfectly. So there you go. So I want to once again thank Stefan for that. I mean, I know it was weird. Like, he brought me out there basically just to check this out, which was cool of him to do. He also hooked me up with this shirt, which is also nice of him to do. But yeah, again, if you guys are interested, check out the website. You get your disc resurface, pick up some games, use the 15% off coupon, get yourself some stuff. Thank you again to Stefan at GG Retro Games. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you all later.